I'd like to welcome everybody to our June council meeting. In accordance with the Weddin Shire Council Code of Meeting Practice, this meeting will be recorded for the purposes of audio-visual live streaming via Council's website and Facebook page. Those in attendance are asked to refrain from making any defamatory statements and comply with all relevant Weddin Shire Council codes, policies and procedures at all times. Acknowledgement of country. Weddin Shire Council would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people who are the traditional custodians of the land. Weddin Shire Council would also like to pay respect to the elders both past and present of the Wiradjuri Nation and extend that respect to other Aboriginal Australians who are present. Acknowledgement of service. We honour our service personnel who have sacrificed their lives in the defence of our freedom, peace and prosperity. We acknowledge all of our frontline workers and volunteers who each day provide our essential and non-essential services, especially those within our Weddin Shire local government area. Item 4, attendance and applications for leave. We have one application for leave from Councillor Howell. Could have a move and a second to accept that. Move Councillor Best, second to Councillor Frome. All those in favour? Aye. Carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 5, confirmation of the May minutes. The minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 16th of May 2024 will be taken as read and confirmed. I've moved and a seconder. Moved Councillor McKellar, seconded Councillor Kanar. All those in favour? Aye. Carried. Thank you, councillors. Disclosures of interest, please, Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of declarations of conflict of interest, Mayor Craig Benbrick, item 13.1 in relation to the proposed alcohol-free zone. Description of interest is property owner. It's pecuniary interest, it's significant, yes, and you'll be leaving the chamber. Councillor Paul Best, item 13.1 for the proposed alcohol-free zone. Description of interest is owner of property in the main street. It's a pecuniary interest, it's significant, yes, and you'll be leaving the chamber. You have declared an interest in item 13.2 in relation to a development application 12/2024. Description of interest is owner of the property in the main street opposite the application. It's a pecuniary interest and you'll be leaving the room. Councillor Jan Parlett, item 13.1, the proposed alcohol-free zone in the main proposed alcohol-free zones report. Description of interest is owner of the property in the main street. It's pecuniary, yes. It's significant, yes, and you'll be leaving the chamber. Councillor Philip Diprose in relation to item 13.4 in regards to a development application 1/2024. Description of interest is tourism operator. It's a pecuniary interest, yes. It's significant, yes, and you'll be leaving the chamber. Myself as General Manager, so there's 2 reports that are late. So 8.2 was just a software issue. That's just in relation to the Merrill Minute notifying Council of the General Manager's performance review. It's pecuniary interest, yes. Significant, yes. I will be leaving the chamber. Item 16.1 is the application for leave. Again, another late report if accepted by Council. Pecuniary interest, yes. Significant, yes, and I'll be leaving the chamber. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, item 7, public forum. We have no public forum tonight. Item 8.1, the Merrill Minute Country Mayors Association New South Wales General Meeting. The recommendation there, the Country Mayors Association of New South Wales had held the general meeting in Sydney on the 10th of May 2024. The general meeting was well attended with 142 representatives of country New South Wales councils and associated organisations. The General Manager and I both attended the meeting. The focus was financial sustainability, which was a hot topic with the state and federal inquiries on the issues currently underway. There were several ministers there. There were a number of key speakers. The Country Mayors Association unanimously voted to welcome Upper Hunter Shire Council. The Deputy Mayor and General Manager were welcomed and presented with CMA badges. Further information obviously can be read on the report this one. I'll move in a second for that recommendation. Move Councillor McKellar, second Councillor Parlett. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you, councillors. Then we have item 8.2. It's a late report. General Manager's annual performance review. The recommendation there is that council note the report. Have we got any other reading on that, or is that just... I've advised the General Manager that the annual review will take place on Friday the 21st of June 2024, commencing at 9 a.m, with correspondence sent to all councillors on the 27th of May. The General Manager Review Committee will meet, including myself, Deputy Mayor Paul Best, Councillor Parlett, that's the council elected by the council, and Councillor Kanar, council elected by employee. Council has contracted Mr Christian Morris from LG New South Wales as the facilitator, and the annual performance review business paper was circulated to councils on the 12th of June 2024. A further report, once received, will be submitted to the next ordinary council meeting for consideration and adoption. Do we have a mover and a seconder?
So just, I think we need to go back a step and accept that's a late report.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good idea, Phil.
Agreed.
So we have moved Councillor Dipro, second Councillor Best. Do we accept the late report? All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you, councillors. So we have a move and a second for that recommendation. Councillor Frame. Thank you, Councillor Frame, with a big smile. And Councillor Parlett. All those in favour?
Yes. Aye.
It's carried. Thank you, councillors. Could someone bring Noreen back in, please? Item 9, motions and questions with notice. Notice of motion, Main Street Renewal Project, funding. Notice of motion from Councillor Dipro. Would you like to speak on the notice of motion, Councillor Dipro?
Yes.
Oh, move Councillor Dipro, seconded. We have a second, Councillor Frame, thank you.
Yeah. I guess the background of this is lovely to be almost at the end. For the last however many years, I don't know how many people have asked me what it costs for the Main Street, where did the money go, that sort of stuff. For me, I don't see this as a big thing at all. I'm not after a big report. I have had a conversation with the director after I submitted this. I see this as a one-page table, which pretty much says whatever column it is, I'm not quite sure, but on the one side it's expenditure, whatever categories we've got within the system, whether it's design, whether it's lights, whether it's sealing the road, whatever it might be, gardens. But on the other side is where'd the money come from. So for me it's whatever grant sources there were. What I'm not asking is that we try and reconcile from, okay, we got this grant for $600,000 which was to cover these other bits. I'm not really interested in that. It's what were the sources of funds in a major sense and what were the major bits that it was spent on. And it can be positioned as indicative, work in progress, whatever words you want to put, but it's certainly not something that's gone through a forensic audit and is all auditable or what have you. It's basically an estimate or high-level numbers on what it cost, where the money come from, and that's pretty well it. So, that's my comments.
Any comments, councillors? Councillor Keller?
I just wanted to clarify, so it's a very broad brush thing you want, it's not a forensic audit.
No. Well, I saw $30,000. I think it could be done. I'm sorry, I'm doing this as a discussion. Is that okay? I thought it was whatever someone could pull together that know what they're doing in their day. So that was my sort of thinking.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I could just explain, like with the Main Street, as the staff comments are, unlike how we now set up our systems with our work orders or cost centres. So if a grant comes in, and it could be, for example, the Regional Emergency Road Repair Fund, where we've got 30 odd projects, I think, that's in there, we actually break it up into, different work order numbers to reflect each project. For what unfortunate reason, I wasn't here at the time, all the different grants that went into the Main Street has gone into the one work order number. So the information won't match up in terms of the grant funding to the component per se. We can definitely run the report. It's thousands of lines, but we can definitely wrap it up at the end in terms of what yearly expenditure from a financial year perspective, because it totals just a bit over $6 million of how much was actually spent. And the same is in terms of how much grant funding we also received it was the same amount. So we can definitely list all of those grants in there. It was just a situation of when reading this notice of motion, it appeared a bit more labour intensive, because if you wanted the actual grant allocation, because there's other parties involved, like for example with the local roads and community infrastructure funding, we actually need audit sign off. So they're still going back to us on certain line items that we either have to include or not include. So we just wanted to make sure at what level and scale we're talking about, because to me it felt like it was a forensic audit in terms of what was actually being requested.
Councillor Paulette.
No, I just thought, I read it, initially I didn't think it was a forensic audit, I just thought, as we have had requests in the community, how much did it cost? I thought it would be a simple explanation as to, these are the grants, this is what we got,
Yep.
and this is what it cost, you know, because the grants equal the cost, as such.
Okay.
Councillor Cook.
I was just going to clarify as well, because I heard Councillor Diprose asking for, or has a notice of motion forward to get the costs for the Main Street. He's asking for a high level. I hear Councillor McKellar asking or suggesting that it might have been a forensic audit. I don't think those words have ever been used. I am concerned, sorry, I'm just thinking. I am concerned when I read a report that says it's going to cost us $30,000 and we have to employ tourism staff to make that report. From my understanding, grants need to be acquitted, and that is information we should know.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, as we've said, because it's gone into the one work order number, it's a lot of manipulation, and it is correct. Grants do need to be acquitted. It's a lot of colour coding. It's the manual labour intensiveness of it. It's just around when councillors put in notices of motion that just state that it can be done within baseline operations, and you've got staff who are doing significant hours just to get their day-to-day jobs done. So as we've said, it's just around what kind of information. If it's a one-pager, that's very, very easy done. It was just, for me, because I wasn't part of that conversation and reviewing the notice of motion, I thought it was around trying to forensically audit what had occurred with the books.
Okay, so do we need to reword your motion, Councillor Diprose?
The motion at the end says what's reasonable. That was the qualifier. And it's,
Yeah, change it to a single page report.
Through you, Mr Mayor, Councillor Diprose did speak to Luke and myself, and then we explained the intricacies of getting together that information. The sense was, and also that's why I respectfully suggested that it's what's reasonably able to be done, because if you acknowledging that, you know, you can just do what you can reasonably do, with given the resources we've got, and a time frame that's reasonable in that.
I guess through you, Mr. Mayor, reasonable can sometimes be open to interpretation too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we, is there any idea of what a reasonable audit might cost?
I think that's like asking what's reasonable in the law for fair work, and it's reasonable hours of staff, and no, it's not defined anywhere in law.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, if it's, as Councillor Diprose has stated, if it's, you know, the high level, that can be done. We can run the report, and the grants have been reported in the past, in past business papers. It's just matching those two together.
Okay, that seems reasonably
I think
simple.
the motion's pretty.
Yeah. Okay. Everybody happy? All those in favour? It's carried. Thank you, councillors.
Mr Mayor, I record against that, thank you.
You got that, Liz? Yep. Thank you. Item 10, General Manager's Report. 10.1, Self-Initiated Improvement Management Plan. I've got a recommendation there, councillors. Would you like to speak to that?
Move in a second.
Oh, moving seconder, Councillor Frame and Councillor Best, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you're all aware, we've had this self-initiated improvement management plan in place for almost a year in terms of actually formalising it. I think it was December of last year. I think we've progressed significantly in the actions that we've put forward. So this plan was just the latest update that went to the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee, and then identifying actions that required council's attention and also the Audit Risk and Improvement's attention in terms of what needs to be a focus and a potential ongoing concern. Some of them that were flagged around, for example, procurement and purchasing processes and contract management. Although we've been meeting and we've put up a draft procurement policy and draft contract management policy, I personally felt that we still needed to flag this as an ongoing need to address, because we need to make sure that we're not just creating policies and procedures and then not equipping staff with the relevant learning and development opportunities to actually, be able to implement the intent of these policies as well. So there are those couple of things there, and then the new thing that has been added on is the adoption of the new long-term financial plan, creation of the long-term financial plan now that we've got some additional resources, and also looking at the operational plan budget and also allowing for some external help in that space as well.
Thank you. Any comments, councillors? Okay, all those in favour of the... Sorry, Councillor Best?
All I'd say is I think it was a pretty honest and unbiased approach to the review, actually. I thought it was really, really good. You pointed out some things that need attention and some things that don't, and where you're up to with them all. So I think it's a good report in that sense. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cook?
Just on page 20, and I think the General Manager just said it, that the action update was provided to the ARIC on the 16th of May and now to Council. Just a note that ARIC is an advisory body to Council, and I think we might be suggesting that, well, Council is the overarching body for strategic and ARIC is the advisory body, just to make that a note, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think everyone in this room would probably understand that, and the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee, I think as councillors you would also want feedback from your own Audit Risk and Improvement Committee in terms of anything that they might raise before you make council decisions as well.
After the recommendation there, councillors, is just to receive and note the report. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Item 10.2, fees for councillors and the Mayor, 2024-25 financial year. You got a mover and seconder. Move Councillor Biprose, second Councillor Kanar. Would you like to speak to the recommendation there?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. We as staff had a look at the Remuneration Tribunal's determination, so that was an increase of 3.75%. They also provide a range in terms of what is minimum and maximum for our category, which is obviously a rural category in terms of what councillors' monthly fees are in terms of being an elected official there. So the staff report makes that slight recommendation. Instead of applying the 3.75, we're making the recommendation of going to the maximum of our category. So it ends up being what is pretty minor. I think it's an immaterial increase of $4.50 per month per councillor, and the difference between the 3.75 and the maximum, and then $5.95. Again, an immaterial change that we're recommending. Did any councillors have any questions or comments?
Councillor Biprose?
That is for the motion. The council, it's been customary that we go for the maximum. I think the last time I did my calculations on how many hours I spend as a councillor versus what the amount is, I think it was 57 cents an hour. which is not exorbitant. I think the other thing I looked at too at one stage was other states and what they do. Your rural councils in Queensland, I think their minimum fee per annum is about $60,000. So 9 councils for that amount of money, and we want to encourage people to stand for council. So I speak for the motion.
Councillor McKellar.
I just think we should show a bit of financial restraint here and deny ourselves the increase, because we're denying applications for funding to voluntary organisations. I think we should just show a little bit of restraint and not accept the raise.
Councillor Parlett.
I actually think we're making a decision for the next council, the new council coming in. I think that anybody standing for council, and because we're a small council, your councillors do cover a lot of roles and a lot of areas and a lot of committees and things. So I think that, you know, remunerating councillors and to encourage councillors to stand, and it's not a big cost for the work that these people are going to be doing in the future. And new councillors coming in are going to have to come on board and learn a lot very quickly, so they're going to be spending a lot more hours to begin with. So I'm for the increase.
Councillor Carr.
I would support exactly what Jan has just said. Councillors are not immune from the cost of living pressures and inflation. Really we're talking about a very, very small amount of money for a lot of work that goes in. And I think that any future people who might want to be involved in council as an elected representative should have as much encouragement to do so, and have have access to as much remuneration as possible. And again, we're talking about a very, very small amount of money.
Councillor Cook.
I'm just following on from Councillor Knar. Page 41, it says the difference between the maximum rate and the percentage increase is $4.50 per month.
As was stated.
But I actually think it says $4.50 per year, because it's $13,520 versus $13,515. So that's $4.50 for the year. Page 41.
Okay, all those in favour? That is carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 10.3, resolution register. We're moving to seconder. With Councillor Frame, seconded Councillor Best. Do you like to speak to that, Julian?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In regards to the resolution register, it's just an update as at the 12th of June when we went through and had a look at the resolutions, noting that we did have a council workshop on the 13th of May and that we provided councillors a verbal update on outstanding items. It was raised in relation to one of your mayoral minutes in relation to resolution 249, /23 not being on the resolution register, but upon review we had a look at what was said at the council roadshow, and there was only one customer service request form undertaken or filled out, and that has been actioned. I just noted that we as staff, at an operational level, carry out the council mobile hub. We've received customer service requests through that channel, and based off just the verbal conversations that were said, obviously when people are raising issues around potholes or drainage or the roads and tips, it's very generic if that's the information that councillors are providing back to us, especially without the detail that customers normally provide the staff when they fill out the operational customer service request forms.
Thank you, General Manager. Any comments, councillors? More straightforward. Councillor Cook.
Just in what the General Manager just said, I don't think her statement is consistent with what was said in the workshop on the 15th of May. But that's all I'll say.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor, it was on the 13th of May, and the council workshop stated that it was a notice of motion, it was a mayoral minute. So that's been rectified. corrected, because it was actually incorrectly stated that a notice of motion was put forward, but it was the mayoral minute.
Okay, so that was for noting, council. All those in favour? All those in favour, councillors? All right, so we've got 2 against there.
What are you against?
I'm not sure.
Removing the register should be.
Oh, yeah, that's in the register. Yeah, we can put that in.
So all those in favour, again? It's carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 11, Corporate Services Report. Item 11.1, Statement of Bank Balances and application under S409 and S410 to the Minister for Local Government. Got a move and a second for the recommendation. Moved Councillor Frame, second Councillor McKellar. Would you like to speak to that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So I'll just refer you to report 11.1, statement of bank balances, and also a application to apply to the Minister for a loan to cover any potential shortfalls in restricted cash. So as you can see, as at 31st of May 2024, our bank balance was 9.6 mil, and the restricted cash was about 9.6 as well. So effectively, it's line ball. There was a slight, unrestricted cash available, about $5,000. Roll that through to 30 June, which we have to do to be able to speak to this tonight. We would anticipate anything up to 1.8 mil required to cover any shortfall, and there's quite a few moving parts there, and I can just let you know, if we receive the tripartite funding, that 1.8 will reduce by 1.3 mil. We are expecting it. They've told us it's coming through before 30th of June, but until such time, we still need to just make that provision, and that's why we've inserted that resolution into tonight's paper. The second aspect is that we're in negotiating with the bank at the moment. We've heard that there are no issues from a commercial perspective to get that, but for a temporary overdraft with a time limit of 2 months, basically, through to the end of 31 August. And those two things, if we need them, should be more than enough. As I say, I'm just being very conservative here. We may get some more cash in and improve this position. But at this stage, we need to come to council and resolve that we can actually apply our sewer fund. In other words, it's an internal loan movement only, out of restricted to unrestricted, for a time duration of 2 months to the end of 31 August. So if that's the case, I would suggest we just need to amend our resolution that's in there in possibly 3, all in 3, and then possibly insert a 5. And I'm happy to suggest something, but I'll leave that with you for discussion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I can just make one staffing comment, that I think if anyone was watching this or reading the paper and not really understanding the discussion around it, it is just in relation to the fact that Council's bank account at the moment, as our Director of Corporate Services alluded to, has significant funding in it, but it is restricted for grants purposes. So this essential request for an internal loan, and then also the discussions with the bank, is just because of this, I guess, paper breach per se. It's not the fact that council has run out of money. It's just around having that flexibility of unrestricted cash to make sure that we can just keep the basic operations of council going, acknowledging that quite a few of our expenditures and our issues coming into the end of the financial year just relates to things like final milestones and acquittals have been delayed by our funding bodies. And then there's been final acquittals of grants that should have been acquitted at the end of 30 June, where the funds should have come in. Because of the wet weather, we actually managed to get an extension into next financial year, which is good because it means we're not rushing roadworks and potentially causing more damage. So for that reason, we expect to acquit those grants quite early in the first quarter of the next financial year. And there's also been some variations, again, because of that inclement weather. So delaying start times on certain projects, which means that those milestone payments aren't coming in to this financial year. And then we've also discussed that even things like our road maintenance council contract, our RMCC works will be done up until 30 June, but we don't expect to put the claim in until next financial year. So those funds will come in next financial year as well. But as I think the resolution had acknowledged that if our financial assistance grant was to come in early, so councils last year managed to receive that funding in whole upfront before the end of the financial year. We haven't had an announcement on it, and in the past they pay quarterly, so normally they pay around the 15th of August. So that's the worst case scenario, I guess you could say, and that's what we're planning for, because we don't want to be into that restricted cash breach situation that we were last year. So we are quite on the front foot, and we're using as many means and avenues as possible just to get us over the line. And even if we apply to the Minister for this internal loan against the sewer fund, if the financial assistance grants comes in, then we'll cancel the loan application internally.
Jim, as discussed in the pre-meeting briefing, there might be an item 5 to go in there about
The council endorse an application for a temporary overdraft of 1 million with a time limit of the 31st of August 2024.
Yeah. And through you, Mr Mayor, item 3 will also need to be amended because we've put in that there's funds to be borrowed from this developer contribution sewer fund and then also the unexpected grant, so that will just need to be removed from the resolution and amended.
And through you, Mr Mayor, so essentially we're only able to borrow against this sewer fund,
Yep.
which is the 724,000.
Yep.
Councillor Pollard, is it okay if we move that within your amendment? So then it's just the one amendment?
Committee of the whole maybe, or perhaps I do need to move that, so I need someone to move that the second that is included in there. We do need to, and also to amend number 3. I would like that the overdraft be the priority, the first option. Is that possible? That depends on what people think too.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the overdraft would then need to be increased, which I don't think the bank
I don't think you can only go to a certain amount.
Yeah, well, we think, we've only discussed with the bank $1 million.
That's the figure I've...
Yeah, and through you, Mr Mayor, as well, the overdraft currently is $250,000. It hasn't been drawn, so it's a case of we've got that there, and it would be a temporary one up to $1 million to cover it. We don't expect to use nearly that, but I think it's important to have it there as a safety buffer.
So we've got the wording for that.
I'll suggest, through you, Mr Mayor, could I suggest
Yes.
what a board?
I think Councillor Pollard
Carl,
already read it.
Yes,
Yeah.
Could you read that again, please, Councillor?
The council endorse an application, or do you want the words? For a temporary overdraft of $1 million with a time limit of the 31st of August 2024.
Okay, and then we'd have to amend number 3 as well, and taking out of that.
So we need to change
We're
that.
taking out the sewer fund of 102,000. Taking out that.
That's right.
What? No, we're
Move
taking, leaving the sewer fund of 2724 in there.
Yep.
Taking that one out.
So you delete developer contributions. And then the cash balance, purpose, specific purpose and expected grants of $1 million. And through you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, I would probably state that up to $724,000 and then,
Yes.
yeah.
Is everybody happy with those amendments as discussed?
Could this be done where the overdraft is sufficient to cover the lot, rather than do that internal transfer stuff?
Don't think so.
1.8.
So rather than do that 700,000 internal loan stuff, we just do the overdraft at 1.7 if that's enough, and then get on with that.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, it probably will work out that way. But I think just in case, I think it at least gives council a buffer, as I mentioned previously as well, but I'll mention it now, but this is just making, for precaution. We do not expect to utilise it, we do not expect to have to actually lodge it with the Minister. We just want to have, we're just being conservative, that's all, and we're putting a limit on it as well, so that it's then money that's retained where it should be, but just to be on the safe side, because we've been promised a lot in terms of the Transport for New South Wales and things haven't come through, and I don't want us to be in a situation where we're then breaching the legislation and then having a qualification on our audited financial statements. So I'd prefer to have it included and kept there if that's possible.
Happy with that?
I'm going to vote. I'm not comfortable with that internal loan for the sewer fund. I'm going to vote against the motion, but that's all right.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just from a code of meeting practice, Councillor Parlett's moved an amendment, so you just need to put,
Yeah. So,
Sorry, code of meeting practice, we did ask to go to the committee of the whole, and that was not taken up.
have we got a second of the committee of the whole?
So go to committee of the
Second,
whole.
all those in favour?
Right.
That's good.
Right, that's defeated. So, Councillor Parlett, are you happy with that amendment?
I still have reservations about the sewer fund, but, like, as the overdraft is I feel the way to go, but our capacity for the amounts, and that's, I do want to see that we're not in a situation where we're forced to then have to take another action. But as I said, the priority to me would be that we preference is using that overdraft first, and we're only using that with the understanding of sewer funds if we're desperate.
Yeah, through you,
My
Mr. Mayor.
concern is, I understand the acquittal process is the problem, and that's why I think putting timeframes on your overdraft and on your things, so it comes back to council, and then we're working on what is the right things to do.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I actually would be very happy with that. I think it's just a temporary arrangement for the internal loan, and it's a temporary arrangement for the overdraft.
So did you want some extra words in there saying that the overdraft should be used as the first option, Councillor Parlett, along those lines?
If we can, that's probably
But
the overdraft.
through you, Mr. Mayor, to the director, wouldn't we need to increase the $1 million?
Depends on how our director feels. He's the one managing this.
I'm not comfortable with that.
It's,
It could say up to.
yeah, I would.
So increase it up to 1.8. So then it's not a flat out 1 million.
Could we possibly
Yeah,
have council discussion before we work out this,
We do that.
yeah,
All
the
right.
work?
Yep.
Please.
So is that, do you think the bank will come to that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, sorry, just mindful of code of meeting practice, we're just saying up to, and then obviously that gives that flexibility, if we increase the amount to cover the total amount.
If you can increase your overdraft, you might be able to negotiate that. So
Yeah,
I think that would be a better way to go. Yeah.
Okay,
I
so
just
you
think
want
we've got to be mindful when we're making financial decisions and putting our director in an awkward situation, that we as councillors are mindful of our role of overseeing finances and making sure we're being accountable and responsible too.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm just going to preface the code of meeting practice because Councillor Parlett has moved an amendment. So we just need to then put it as the motion, like the amended emotion, and then to see if we can, yes.
I was just sort of trying to get
Yes,
tease
sorry,
out the
that's
fact that
yeah,
you want to
yeah.
use that overdraft first, which is not
Yes.
in there.
Of up to, and then we can increase.
Up to 1.8.
Yes,
Right.
yeah.
1.8 million.
Yes.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, as a priority of to source the funds.
Yes. Thank you. Yes.
Application as a priority for a temporary overdraft,
Yeah.
or something along those lines.
Yeah. Just adding priority
Where, so the council endorsement application.
as a priority. So we put it, and then you can then have go into further debate.
As the first funding source,
Okay.
something like that.
Okay.
How to explain it? So that it is to be used as preferentially the first funding source to
Okay.
rectify any
obviously-
shortfalls or issues.
Obviously that.
Code of meeting, sorry, I'm just
I don't know how
point of order.
someone might have better words.
Okay, so we now got the amendment. So does anyone want to discuss the amendment?
I'd like to speak against the amendment.
Okay.
Just to make matters, but honestly, I'd rather see us borrow against ourselves and pay ourselves the interest than us paying the bank the interest on an overdraft for $700,000. So I'd rather put the $1 million in, borrow from the sewer funds for the $700,000 if we need to, but yes, use the overdraft for the first $1 million. But if we go above the $1 million level, then you use the sewer fund. But I'd rather borrow against ourselves. It's our money, it's in the bank. I'd rather not pay overdraft fees on $700,000. I'm not sure the exact figure. I know it's not going to be well breaking, but I think I'd rather pay ourselves than. So that's my
Previous
comment.
Mayor, there will be the interest cost, and there'll be a $250 facility fee. So that's just the costs from a cost perspective. But definitely there'll be an interest cost to it.
Okay. So
That's all I'm speaking against.
would you like to make an amendment to that amendment, Paul?
To get back to the original amendment. We did the $1 million for the. We have an overdraft of $1 million. If that at some point that we get above the $1 million, we then draw down on our.
Okay.
It's our own money. I'm quite happy to council to use it for a period of 2 months.
So, all right, so Councillor Canada.
I agree with Paul. I don't agree or speak against this amendment as far as funding source. For a start, have we been approved for $1.8 million in overdraft? As far as to my knowledge, we've been approved for $1 million. But to support what Paul was saying, I'd much rather we be borrowing against our own funds than external funds if it's going to save us interest. So I speak against that amendment.
For you, Mr. Mayor, that's exactly right, Councillor Kennard. I've had discussions with the bank only up to $1 million.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, if I can make a comment that the bank can't guarantee that this approval will come in before 30 June. So that is another risk that we do wear, but Office of Local Government will probably get the approval before that date.
Okay, so we'll vote on the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment?
As it stands.
As it stands.
Have we finished our discussion of meeting of the whole?
We need to go out of committee.
We haven't, we didn't go into committee of the whole.
Yes, we did.
No, we didn't.
No, we did. It was
We
rejected.
didn't go into committee of the
Sorry.
whole. All right, so all those in favour of the amendment? Okay, the amendment is defeated. We want to go back to the original
Take back 1 million.
notice of motion of 1 million.
Can I speak about the notice of motion? Yes.
Yep, hang on.
Sorry, through you, Mr Mayor, it's just the motion, it's not a notice of motion.
I apologise, Mr
So
Mayor, for
we
my
are
terminology
going
being
to
incorrect.
leave the number 3 as it is, which was part of that amendment. So
So we're referring to the original amendment, or going back to
74.
we're going back to the complete original amendment, I guess. Yes.
You're still taking out the...
Yeah. The sewer and the unexpected, yeah.
Councillor Cook, would you like to speak on that?
Yes, in the motion as put to councillors is number 2 for council to, are being asked to move this motion that the General Manager write to the Minister and about the breach of the breaches of cash. From my understanding, the letter has already been written and a meeting has already happened with OLG, so I don't understand how we can be asked to write, well, asked to give permission or asked to give approval for this to happen, which from my reading of this motion, this agenda item is that we're actually asked to breach the Local Government Act, and I don't think that's a responsibility as a council we should be taking lightly. We've just had a discussion on amendments before we actually discussed the motion, but the motion is basically asking councillors to endorse a cash breach, which is a breach of the Local Government Act.
Through you, Mr Mayor, if I could speak to the first point, the letter that has been sent out to councillors that was sent to the Minister for Local Government was to help Office of Local Government prioritise staff to our internal loan application. It acknowledged in the letter that a council resolution was actually required to formalise the application, so that information is incorrect. In relation to the breach, you breach a restricted cash breach because you didn't apply to the Minister for an internal loan. So the fact that we are actually putting this application in before 30 June means that we won't breach the legislation if the internal loan is approved, and we obviously have other means and mechanisms around the tripartite and then also the overdraft situation. So that is actually incorrect. The issue that we ran into last financial year was because we didn't write to the Minister. If we'd written to the Minister and applied for the internal loan before 30 June, we actually wouldn't have been in a restricted cash breach. It concerns me that the amount of times we've reported this, even through our self-improvement initiated management plan, that there's still a lack of understanding around how restricted cash breaches actually work and operate, and a restricted cash breach is just around commission.
So if I can continue on what I was saying, on page 98, the total restricted cash we've listed is 9.651. What was reported in the QBRS to councillors last month was 10.2. So our cash restricted amount has changed. So I'm just noting that point. I'm also noting that in our budget on page 147, we're saying that we're going to be short 2.692. I also note in our discussion about tips that we have 1.7 per tip, which is $3.4 million hole. So while we're talking about, and we also, say in our business papers this month, that the sewer requires some significant work, and yet we're asking to take the funds from the sewer fund when we know there is work to do. So I sort of feel that I'm being asked, and I believe I've been told that I'm incorrect and I have been corrected, but myself as a councillor sitting here reads a motion that asks me to give permission to a general manager to write a letter which has already been written, which has already been sent and has already been acted upon. It also asks me in this notice in this agenda item to take money from the sewer fund, or the developer contributions for the sewer fund, from the sewer fund, and also for special purpose unexpended grants. So I think this whole recommendation that we're being asked to vote on needs some significant amendment, and I didn't go with the Councillor Parlett's amendment, not because I didn't agree with it, but I thought we had to have this discussion before we can vote on an amendment number 5. I think it should actually be an option. It's an either or. We can go with 1 to 4 or number 5. And I will put that as another amendment, that we put it as another option instead of the option in front of us, that our option is to go towards an overdraft.
Yep.
Rather than as an amendment.
Through you, Mr Mayor, if I could just clarify again, point 2 was a request for the Minister or the Office of Local Government to prioritise staff for when our application is formalised after tonight's council meeting. The council meeting still needs to happen. We still need a council resolution. So I think we need to let that point go. In relation to our earlier discussion during the amendment discussion, we've already said that we will need to amend point 3 around the sewer fund of being up to $724,000. I think we all agree that that will need to be amended by the time the council goes to vote. Now, in relation to the quarterly budget review statement, that is a point in time up to the 31st of March. So if we're reporting on what the bank balances look on the 31st of May, of course there's going to be a point of difference. In relation to what we've stated in the Quandiella report and the Cragable report on the tips in the $1.7 million of what we're predicting per site, that's not forecasted in a budget. It's just saying what the actual issue and what we're trying to work through with the EPA at the moment. I think it's really concerning to misinform the public around that information when the two are actually not linked. Now, in relation to the question on the sewer works, that is what's been identified for the 24-25 budget from our financial assistance grant when it actually comes in. It's not related to the $724,000 that's currently within our sewer fund.
Thank you, General Manager. All right, would someone like to move that we put the motion?
We've got to amend.
Yeah, I'm on board. If asking Councillor Cook, have you put an amendment forward, Councillor Cook, or not?
I'd like to put an amendment that we make that an option 2, that we vote for an overdraft as opposed to the options in front of us at the moment, which is, well, number 2 has already been actioned. Number 3 needs significant change. Number 4, yes, we can withdraw, but I think if we move towards going to an overdraft, we don't need number 4 either.
I'm going to say it for a third time because I think it's really unfair to say that item 2 has already been actioned when I have explained that we need to put forward a council resolution to the Office of Local Government. I think it's really unfair to keep stating that.
I think...
Councillor Cook, point of order. We're not in committee of the whole. You've had 3 or 4 goes at this, and I think that'll do. So the amendment is there, I take it. I think was pretty much going with the overdraft, which was the priority, which was...
Sorry, Councillor Cook, can you repeat what number 3 was?
Your amendment.
My amendment is an option 2, that we vote for, instead of going down the recommendation in the business papers, that we move to a overdraft.
Sorry, that we move.
What's your words?
The council endorsed an application
Yep.
for a temporary overdraft of $1 million.
Or 1.8?
That you're looking at 1.8.
Yeah, let's put 1.8.
We can't...
That, see, that's at the moment that's not on the table.
Well, but that's what the motion is, that we work towards an overdraft of 1.8 instead of going into our sort of, instead of taking money from our sort of fund.
Can we have a seconder for that amendment? We haven't got a seconder. Defeated. Now we go back to the original recommendation again,
Amendments. With amendments.
with amendments.
Yeah.
What amendments have we got now?
Yeah. I'd like to move an amendment to the motion, please, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, please.
We'll get there. We'll get there. So, wait till this catches up. Hang there. Let me go back up the motion. Yeah.
Sorry.
Get there. Do you want to paste the initial
I
one?
think you have to paste the initial one, Liz, and make
The initial one in?
Yeah.
Very first one.
Well, I think
Yeah, it's basically amending, basically it's probably going to be amending point 3 and then
Yeah.
adding in point 5.
I think that's already done.
Yes, you're right.
I think that's already done there, that second one.
No, we need to remove the
We need to
developer
remove
that one.
contribution.
That one.
Because we didn't do it as a
Oh.
block. Yeah, okay, yeah. Oh, we did it as a block, sorry.
On point 3, please, I'd like to amend the delegate the general manager to apply for the money from the sewer fund of up to 7. That's right. Yes. Sorry. Yep. Yep. And then move down to point 5. I'd like to amend point 5
1.1 million.
to $1 million, please. Yeah. Endorse an application as priority for funding sources for temporary overdraft of $1 million.
Okay, we've got a second to that amendment. Second, Councillor Frame. All those in favour of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Now becomes the motion.
We better have a show of hands on that one.
Yeah. Show of hands.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's carried. Do we need a division on that or not? Anybody? Just carried. Up, you want a division on that, Councillor Cook?
So sorry.
Now becomes the motion.
So the amendment now becomes the motion. So we've had a move and a second for the original motion. All those in favour?
I'd like to speak for my amendment.
Okay.
Or for the motion now.
For the motion, which now, I just want to point out, I believe that the General Manager's done perfectly the right thing by contacting the Office of Local Government and asking him about the right procedure to take place, which is now what we're doing. So that's the simplest solution. I think the General Manager's contacted them, we've now got the right information of the right way to go forward with this. I have no issues whatsoever against borrowing the money basically from ourselves. It's our money, it's the council's money, the community's money, which is already in our bank account, to use it for another purpose for 2 months at most. I have no problem with that whatsoever, and it's purely to pay the bills before we actually get paid back from. It's an accounting issue with the way that the government gives us our grants. I have no problem with that whatsoever. And I think the overdraft, it should be used, if we have to use the overdraft to $1 million, like I said, we've been approved for that. I'm quite happy for the Director to do that. That's all. Thank you.
Well, hang on. We better go back to your amendment then, Paul, because we've got there that the overdraft should be used as a priority.
That's
I think.
fine.
And I think that was wrong, wasn't it? Well, you just
No,
you
no,
don't want to use it as a
I'm
priority.
fine. But either way, if we end up using our own funds, I'm quite happy with it.
Right.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor, I think it's a combination of both.
Yes, it has to be. 1.8, we're going to be in that
1.8.
situation.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, we will likely need accommodation, but of course we're going to go for the overdraft and cash coming in the door between now and 3rd of June, before we actually then apply for then have to actually use the loan, potentially.
Councillor Keller?
I'd just like to point out to the public that if the government were paying their bills on time, none of this would be necessary. We'd be able to fund ourselves.
We're a bank.
They're using us as a bank.
Councillor Keller?
I'd like to speak for the motion. I think it's General Manager and the Director have done the right thing by attempting to have a toolbox of solutions to this to give us as much security at the time of the end of the year as possible. And I think this is the best way to go about it, so I support the motion.
I think we voted on the motion, didn't we?
No.
No,
Haven't we?
No, you voted on the
Okay.
motion, this now becomes, yeah, so you
Okay.
vote on the amendment, this now.
It comes to the motion, okay.
Yeah, you now need to put it.
So I'll put that to the meeting, that recommendation. All those in favour?
aye.
Aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is carried. Thank you, Councillor. Do we need a division on that?
Yes, please.
No, can I record
Yeah,
this again?
recorded.
Yes, no, I have to vote against because I'm still not happy about 7/24. So,
Councillor Pilot, did you want to be recorded against that?
yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Right, we've got that.
Yeah.
Thank you, councillors. Item 11.2, rates and charges collection, May 2024. The recommendation is to move in a second for that. Moved Councillor Frame. Seconded Councillor Kanar. Thank you. Would you like to speak to that, please, Director?
Through you, Mr Mayor, thank you. So I provide the rates and charges report for you, and I'll take it that it's been reviewed. So that's something we monitor every month. And just to note that our as a percentage of our rates, we try to maintain under 10% per the OLG benchmark. The 2023-24 was about 11, is sitting around about 11% in arrears at the moment. Just looking at the 2023-24. So I've spoken previously about the rates that are overdue from the year before, but I want to take those out just to let you know that we're actually tracking pretty well to the OLG benchmark for the 2024 year. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Councillors, any comments? Thank you. All those in... Sorry, Councillor Best,
Just a
yes?
question to the Director. Do we normally charge the overdue accounts? Is that as a normal standard thing?
Yeah, for you, Mr Mayor, that is correct. There is interest that's charged for outstanding or rates and arrears. But just the one thing I did want to mention is that obviously in the current economic times, we understand that if ratepayers are having difficulties in paying outstanding rates, just to make contact with council, we recently sent out 241 letters to people who were in arrears or who had outstanding rates, and that the fourth instalment that gets sent out also shows what's also in arrears. And come in and have us, talk to us or send us through an email just to start a discussion around whether or not, a payment plan that works for the ratepayer is suitable, because that's the last thing, stress that we want for people.
Yeah, that was going to be my comment. Was more that the interest accrue, plus we actually have to. If there's a cost to the debt collection, we'd rather not do that.
Yeah.
So come in and please speak to staff straight away, and we can avoid those costs. We can avoid the community having to pay for debt collection as well. So it's better for everybody to work out a payment plan or something with council. That's all.
So the recommendation was that the council note the information update on the rates and charges collection for May 2024. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 11.3, operational plan 2024. Director, would you like to speak to that?
I'm going to move in a second.
Oh, sorry, we need to move in a second. Move Councillor Best, second Councillor McKellar. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the operational plan has been tabled for in draft 2 months ago. It's been out for public exhibition. It's had some comments internally and externally. So we have gone and applied those comments where appropriate into the operational plan. We now have available a lot of the statutory rates and or council rates, or fees and charges that weren't available previously. So I'll take it that you've read the content. The main point is that we've got in terms of the 2025 profit and loss, we're in the operational plan. We're predicting a 2.7 mil operating loss. And if you add back the depreciation, which we must always do to look at the cash position, you come back to the $800,000, and you'll see in the operational plan by program, in the operational plan itself, there's $800,000. So that's the cash surplus we're looking at for the 2025 financial year. Some of the changes, we've made some changes since the draft operating plan, and a lot of it is to do with the grants, the movement with the grants. A lot of it also is to do with the RMCC work, so the highway maintenance work, and also the audit works that we need to do as well. So they have come in at a higher amount that we predicted initially, so that's gone in and reflected through, and that's improved our position as well. As I've said, there's been some changes to the statutory charges and the fees and charges there. Talked about the RMAP, the grants, and slight adjustment to CapEx, not much, and obviously the natural disaster funding as well. We know we've adjusted it now, but essentially it's still pretty similar to the last time. In terms of challenges, we're still, obviously there's our scale and capacity, so we're a small council. We do what we can with the resources we've got, so we're always going to be challenged in that respect. But however, would like to note the finance team is now a full complement, as opposed to this time last year, which wasn't. And that's...
We'd still like more.
So that's made a significant difference. But I mean, it doesn't happen without hard work, and I just wanted to acknowledge my team publicly now for all the hard work that they have done to produce this. That's been an enormous amount of work, actually. But I'm very comfortable to put it up to council now as a document that I sign off, basically. So before I hand it to you to sign off, of course. That's pretty well all I wanted to say, and obviously the financial assistance grant, that has been the other challenge to us. Now, normally every single year we've received a significant amount in advance. This time we haven't, and we've just had a discussion on cash flow and cash, but that has been a really limiting impact on us as well, and a real challenge. So it's just a deferral of cash that we would have had in the door ordinarily. It's untied, so therefore we can use it as for what we need to operate as a council and provide our services. So that's just provided another challenge, but we will get it into the 2025 year. So I think they're the main points I wanted to make.
Sorry through Mr. Mayor. Can I just make a comment that I've just picked up that one of the attachments that's supposed to be in there was the letter that has been circulated to councillors from Office of Local Government around how undercharges work with the rates. I've just noticed that it's not actually listed as an attachment, and with your indulgence, we can reattach it as an attachment 4, just so the public can also see that letter that I've already forwarded on to council when I received it. But I just picked up that, that it wasn't included as the 4th attachment to this report.
Okay. Councillor Diprose.
2 issues, and I think best to go to committee of the whole to do that, so I'll move that we do that. That's all right.
Seconder, Councillor Cook. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you, councillors.
Yeah, so the first one's a question. I noticed in the document in terms of next 12 months deliverables, there's a line item there about councillor study tours. I'm just curious to know how much that is and what what might be envisaged for that, because to my knowledge we've never done that. So.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, that was actually a recommendation, I think actually Councillor Dipper, you put in the previous operational plan for last financial year, and it was just around the rail trail and those opportunities around if study tours could come up in that process. That was that, because that's actually not a new action that actually came.
No, it's not new, but
Yeah.
I didn't understand what it's about.
Yeah, so that was actually that discussion in the workshop that we
That's
previously had around rail, like opportunities for rail trails or whatever it was.
Well,
and
that's certainly something that I would endorse. One or two councillors going to see that if that was something on the agenda, but I don't see it as a study tour. It's not.
Through you, Mr Mayor, that's how the wording came out at the workshop 2 years ago in terms of what councillors stated. So I can't speak for it because it's what the councillors requested at that workshop.
Okay,
there.
so how much is in the budget for it?
Through you, Mr Mayor, it would just be covered through the training and development of what councillors get, but obviously acknowledging that in the first year of the next council term, it will be focused on things like induction and code of meeting practice training and all the necessary things. It would probably be less of a priority, but something that's an opportunity there. But if there was, for example, scholarships that might come up with whatever peak body like LG New South Wales to allow councillors that opportunity, then it obviously is part of that operational plan for councillors to apply for those opportunities too.
Okay. And the second point is, I noticed we've got in there $200,000 for an SRV application. We as a councillor collective, to my knowledge, have never had a discussion on that being an action. Now, I'm not here saying we shouldn't do it, but my concern around this is that this is something that the next council is being asked to pretty much commit to. My concern there is that this can become an election issue around, well, look, let's look at our population. I think the median age of our shire is 52. I think the national average is about 39. We have a very high level of home ownership. We have a high level of people on fixed income. We've got now over 500 people using the food hall, and my understanding is there's been over a 300% increase in Meals on Wheels. But I think for us to actually include $200,000 for a SRV application, that's for the next council to get behind and commit to and drive, as opposed to us handing that over to the next council. So that's my comment. When we come out of committee the whole, I'll potentially move a motion.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, a special rate variation process, to actually get to an application stage, you actually have to do quite detailed reviews of your services to see where, council has attempted to make cost-saving exercises. So that funding, in terms of actually being able to do our own levels of services and whatnot, happy to change the wording around special rate variation process, but we do need to start looking at our levels of service of what we provide to the community and whether or not we then make that application process. So whether or not we can't fund service reviews to that extent within just council's operational budget at this point in time. So,
okay, so sorry, we're suggesting that the wording change to a service level review. Is that what we're doing?
Mr Mayor, I would suggest it would include both. It's unfortunately the decisions that council will have to make. Our question on financial sustainability is an issue. It will be an issue in future years. It's something that, it's not around, unfortunately, winning friends. It's just around what is good for council and what is also good for our community in terms of looking at what we can actually, whether or not increase our services. I hear a lot of the times around things like we should be doing more in the community services space, for example. That's a really good example, yet we don't have a community services department. But if we were to try to do that within the means of the funding that we currently have, we just possibly can't do it. We hear about roads in terms of our road repair. We don't have funding. We rely so heavily on grants to actually do any capital works projects. We actually don't have our own operational budget to do capital works. So they are, unfortunately, difficult questions that the next council will need to think about in terms of council's financial sustainability.
Councillor Best.
I was going to say, in response to Councillor Dipros, I actually think it would be remiss of us not to put it in. I think it's important that we give them the opportunity. We're not giving them any budget to make that decision. We're actually making that decision for them. So to me, this is a way of putting $200,000 aside and saying, if the next council decides to proceed down that path, there's actually some money available to then investigate that.
So what you're saying is it's there, but they don't have to use it if they don't want it.
They don't have to. That's
But if it's
council's
not
decision.
there,
But
if it's
if we
not
don't
there
put
and
it in
they
there,
have to do it, then they can't do it.
their hands tied.
Yeah, and through you, Mr Mayor, to get to the actual council resolution to actually lodge the application to IPART, it's a whole process you actually have to go through. But if you don't have funding to actually get to that point, to actually determine, can you cut levels of service, can you decrease in certain areas or whatever it is and not reach that stage, we need external assistance for it. There's no way our corporate services team can actually do this in-house.
And discuss
As talented as they are, they can't do it in-house.
Discuss about the councils and the cost that has shocked them, how much it's actually cost them above what they thought
Yep.
to put that application in. So.
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Mayor, look, obviously, we of course, we will also always do what we can internally before we go externally. That's just what we do. But we're also being realistic. The other thing I want to point out is, and you'll see it in the business paper there, there have been considerable increases, and they won't stop. They're not going to go away. So I mean, a special rate variation does set a council up for a longer period of time for some sustained additional revenue to fund these things, because unfortunately the cost of providing services isn't going away. So I would like to make the point that a lot of the other councils are having to go down the same pathway. So as difficult and challenging as it is for councils, I think we would be remiss if we didn't at least also review it and give ourselves the opportunity, noting that it will take a good 12 months down the track probably before anything is even at the point where it is going to have an income effect.
Yeah,
And the councils have had their backs put against the wall by state and federal governments with cost shifting. So to pay for all the cost shifting, we need to do something with our rates. I mean, I don't think it's an option. I think it's a must, and it'll happen. But I mean, that's obviously up to the next council. But if we don't put, as Paul said, that money aside for them to do that, then they can't do it till the following year. That'll put us another year behind. So I just think if we put it there, it's just a safeguard.
Yeah, and through you, Mr Mayor, if I can make a comment around what other councils have done through other special rate variation processes, is that they've gone through the process, got the consultants in, consulted with the community, got up into a point where the council decided not to lodge the application to IPART, because that's council's determination at the end of the day. But the reports that they got out from that process, they were able to make the determination on cutting back events. Bathurst is a really good example where they ended up cutting the New Year's Eve event, for example. I know with Upper Lachlan, for example, they have cut back some services as well. So because they didn't go through with the application process, it did actually give them a better opportunity to look at what is crucial, what is actually what council should be doing and should be undertaking, and those other additional things that unfortunately councils take on when service providers fail, the market fails, whether it's aged care, which we fortunately don't have, or childcare, they're the decisions that council have to make. So I'm not saying that the funding is for that purpose of getting it to IPART. It takes us all along on a journey in terms of what services are important to council and what level of service we actually want to have.
Medical, something like that as well.
I guess I don't have a problem if it's in the budget, provided it doesn't commit them to go down the full path. I mean, they've got to have options.
I think it's just theirs. It's far safe for them if they need to. Otherwise, they're a year behind again with the budget.
Could I also through there, just make the point, look, this is a budget, and as you know, everything, you know, in your quarterly budget review statement, you get the opportunity to revote things across the budget as and when through the year. So there is flexibility. It doesn't lock it in for the next council, but it does give them the opportunity.
Councillor Parlett.
While we're in committee of the whole, I just would like to make reference to page 193, general purpose rates. There's a bit of a mention there about council discussion, which was prompted by myself. The discussion in the last month was basically I was asking the questions, when was the under levy picked up and why wasn't it brought to council? It's now covered here. And my third question at that stage was if we could get some clarity for ratepayers to have an understanding of how this will affect their rates in dollar figures. And I just wanted to draw attention to a constituents who did ask some questions about rates, and I do want to thank obviously our Director, Corporate Services, and also the Acting General Manager Luke Shan at the time, who wrote to this ratepayer explaining that the general rates with the 4.7 would have been $770.75 for residential rates. Now the general rates increase would be $792.34. These are estimates and approximates. So therefore the impacting rate increase for the year would result in your ratepayers paying $21.59 for the full rating year. So that isn't as huge a thing as people would have, and reading that sort of in a letter, thank you very much for doing that to that ratepayer. I just thought I'd share that so ratepayers have an understanding. I know we mentioned we'd be putting it in rate notices, but I thought this just helps people understand, because I've had a lot of questions about that. So thank you for doing that.
That's yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. That's thanks, Councillor Parlett. I'll receive those thanks.
I'm very appreciative ratepayer.
And I think that also with the pensioner concession rebate, it actually reduces that down further. So it's actually, I was comforted by that, but it actually has a very, very insignificant increase to the point where it won't impact on anyone trying to afford it. In my sense, it was which was comforting to know and to go through that exercise. So I appreciate the ratepayer who actually sent the letter through.
Right, who are we going?
You're right.
Councillor Dipper? Oh, well, Councillor Cook.
As always, I'm the one who's not quite comfortable with this. There's two parts of this, the delivery plan and the budget. The delivery plan, well, I did write a submission to both of them. I noticed that my table in the submission has not been included in the report, but the delivery plan, one thing that I'm picking up is there was the draft said about the villages and the $5,000 for the villages was taken out, and I now noticed it's back in, so thank you for that. The second one is the budget, and referencing what Councillor Dipros said, the table on page 107 brought to our attention some of the high-level increases and spend, which is including like the SRB application. There's also $150,000 for staff to, or not for staff, the IPNR framework, and there's another $100,000 for finance costs for capital expenditure on road building. I suppose I'm uncomfortable when the first thing I know about an SRB application is by reading a line item in a table for the budget. So it's already been included in the budget, and yet it's never been discussed with council that we might need an SRB.
Council, there's no SRB variation
Well, there is
it's just been accounted for in the budget in case the next council want to do it.
It's a tool. And
And
through you,
that's my
Mr Mayor,
point,
we
Mr.
we
Mayor.
actually have
Yes.
talked about this in budget discussions, in workshops, and just to correct, we haven't tabled the delivery program, we've tabled the operational plan, it's not the delivery program. And the table and whatnot is actually attached to the business paper as what's pulled up on the screen there, so that's also incorrect.
Thank you for over speaking for me, General Manager.
That was me, sorry, Councillor Cook. I was the one.
And then the General Manager. As I can say, there's a SRV application in this table. So, I'm sorry, that's what it says. I'm only reading it here, and that's the first conversation we've had as a council of, I haven't seen the fors and against or the argument of why. I am aware, as I said before, with the cash restrictions and the breach of cash or possible breach of cash, I can see some very big holes in the budget that are not addressed, which I think are probably more important, which is including the tips, the roads, the shield gates, that we don't seem to address.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, I think if the tip situation ends up being a real situation of $1.7 million per site, how are we going to get the funding without that consideration through a special rate variation? So it's all of these questions and scenarios. I would dispute that the councillors have never discussed our financial sustainability question. Just the fact that we are 2 years in terms of having less restricted or unrestricted cash for the just operations of business because state and federal governments are using councils like a bank. It shows that we're not financially sustainable. We are growing as a business. We've got mandatory costs, whether it's employee wages increasing by the local government award and superannuation increasing, insurance premiums increase. We've got added mandatory compliance functions that we need to do, like audit risk and improvement. We need to do internal audits. We need to do these levels of service reviews. And the next council term need to do the integrated planning and reporting documents. It's all well and good to say that the staff can actually do this in-house, but I don't believe we've got the capacity. We've definitely got the capability, but we're already stretched as it is. And for us to then run our own internal processes without getting external help, and I would actually say the councillors in this room, when you voted on your community strategic planning documents, you outsourced that. So that's really, really, I think, unfair that you're not allowing the next council that opportunity to also have the staff outsource consultants in to help with the community strategic plan, to actually do that community satisfaction survey. That was all outsourced. And the previous council before you guys budgeted for that.
Councillor Kalam.
I'd like to move out of committee of the whole.
We've got a second with that. Second, Councillor Frame. All those in favour?
Aye.
That's carried. Thank you, councillors. Okay, so we've got the recommendation there, councillors. We've had to move into seconder. All those in favour?
Aye.
That's carried. Thank you, councillors.
Can I vote against? Any members against, please?
Okay, so before we move out of the corporate services report, I'd just like to bring up to councillors, remind them of our social media policy and the fact that putting misleading information on social media is totally against our policies. There was a post after last meeting, and I realise there's some confusion with some of the corporate services reports among some councillors, that we had a $4 million increase on our wages from the previous year, which to me is total bunk. I don't know where that figure came from. So I would just like to ask councillors to be very careful on their social media posts from here on in. Please, if it's going to be on there, it's going to be factual and truthful. Councillor Canard.
I see this on Facebook. Can you explain it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is not part of the council.
It's not part of the council business paper, I'm just bringing it up as
I
a...
would like to object to it being discussed. I would prefer it to be discussed with whoever did put that on, or
I'm not
Because I
discussing,
don't-
I'm just reminding councillors of their obligations under the social media policy. That's all I'm doing.
Thank you.
Not pointing fingers, just reminding councillors of that fact. Item 12, infrastructure services report. 12.1 draft Grenfell sewer contributions policy. We're going to move in a second now. With Councillor Frame, second and Councillor McKellar. Would you like to speak to that? Yeah, Deputy?
Well, as I said previously, our engineers have calculated a figure there for new developments for assist in paying for and maintaining the new sewage treatment plant, and the calculation has actually been kept very low, and recommend you, yeah, that's it.
Okay. So, Councillor Diprose.
I'll speak for it. The changes weren't terribly material, so it's good.
Councillor Betts.
I agree with Councillor Diprose. I think it's a good report. I've always thought that we saw as an opportunity there for us to change some of the rating regarding things like we have it every year, the showgrounds. You know, they've got a large number of toilets, but it's only open for a couple of days a year. Or sort of, if we could come up with a solution, because they come back every year and ask us to give them some of their costs back. So I think we should be looking in the future, looking at some way of putting some of those in there. I think we've got, is the racecourse the same, and a few other ones that don't get used very often, but a large number of sewage outlets, a number of ETs means they have a substantial cost.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll make a comment on the community
I know it's
project
difficult.
support process, because I have promised council around tabling back a policy, but obviously more urgent things have popped up around sorting out the budget, operational plan, QBRS, that sort of thing, but that policy does address those applications, so there's not the need for, I guess, people who, but our volunteer groups and whatnot, and our community events, that they don't need to apply to us every single year. Yeah, so that is a work in progress. It's pretty much 90% done.
Mine was more, you know, there's some groups that they're paying for equivalent tenant ET because it's how much they would put in the sewage. Well, if they're not open, if they're only open 10 days a year, then there's no way they're contributing that amount. So that's all. But thank you.
Okay. So the recommendation there is that the council approves the draft Grenfell sewer contributions policy being placed on public exhibition for a period of 28 days, inviting submissions in accordance with provisions of section 405 of the Local Government Act 1993. 2, request the General Manager presents a further report to Council with all submissions received at the conclusion of the public exhibition period for Council's further consideration and adoption of the policy, or in the event that no submissions are received during the exhibition period, Council formally adopt the policy without any changes as a policy. All those in favour? It's carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 12.2, road maintenance council contract, RMCC. Would someone like to move and second that? Move Councillor Diprose, second Councillor McKellar. Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the RMCC team for council is performing magnificently, is the word that I can say. They've just recently passed a rigorous Transport for New South Wales quality audit, making council up to standard to perform high-spec Transport for New South Wales work. They've finished all their works, or they're finishing and have finished all the major works for this financial year, and is a major contributor to our funding and operations for council.
Would you like to pass on our congratulations to the staff?
Oh, well, yeah, for sure.
Please.
Yeah. Congratulate all their staff, 100%.
Councillors, any Councillor Brose?
Just a question on the new highway,
Yep.
The work that's here, I was asked a question by a constituent yesterday, because there was going to be an overall upgrade of the Newell for flood. So the work that we're doing on that is not related to that, is it? We're just...
No.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, when they actually go to upgrade the Newell, it's actually going to be beside the current highway. So they'll be building the new highway beside it and then decommissioning the current roadwork. So we won't be part of that process.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Right. No, thank you. Thank you.
Any further councillors? All right. I'd like to put that to council or receive that information. All those in favour?
Aye.
That's carried. Thank you, councillors. 12.3, Construction Service Report, June 2024. Recommendation that the council receive and note information provided on infrastructure works completed in May 2024 and planned works for June 2024. Moving and seconded. Move Councillor Frame, seconded Councillor Paulette.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are, the workforce is working flat out to finish all work that needs to be finished by the end of the financial year to comply with the grant requirements, and to date that is going very well. There might be minor things that we miss out on towards the end of next week, but I'd say we're in the high 90% range there to finish all the works. And again, it's been a difficult year for that workforce, and they've finished a lot of work that has aided the community. And again, congratulations to our workforce and management, engineers in the main office.
Yeah. Councillors? Councillor Best?
My comments, I just thank the staff again for the work they're doing, and I think there's a massive amount of roads that's going to get dealt with. I'm quite happy if you want to take this on notice. I was just wondering, with looking at the gravel maintenance grading, with all that work going on, will the normal maintenance grading be still carried out, or be postponed for roads that aren't in this plan? Or so I'm quite happy to take
Mr. Mayor, I
that.
could probably answer that.
Yeah.
Is that we have still set aside a rural roads maintenance program for next financial year, which we're currently working through that program to actually allocate that funding out.
Yeah.
But as we've learnt, that sometimes you can put things down on paper, but then one road might take up a bit more funding than another road, that sort of thing. So there is a level of flexibility within that plan as well.
Yeah.
But we still will be undertaking it through our financial assistance grant.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. I'll put that to council. We note that report. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you, councillors.
Massive amount.
Item 13, Environmental Services Report, 13.1, Proposed Alcohol-Free Zones. We're going to move the second of the recommendation there. Move Councillor Dipro, second Councillor Kanar. Thank you. Do you want to speak to that, please?
Yes.
Oh, were you out of the room?
Oh, Councillor Kanar, we're happy with Councillor Kanar to take the chair. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, so item 13.1 is proposed alcohol-free zones.
Should we get a mover in a second?
Yes, do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor DeProse, seconded Councillor Frame. So the proposal for the establishment of alcohol-free zones within the Greenfield CBD was placed on public exhibition for 28 days, with 2 submissions being received. It is now recommended that the council adopt the proposed alcohol-free zones and a notice be advertised to the public. The recommendation is that 1. Council adopts the proposed alcohol-free zones as described in the report. 2. A notice complying with section 644B3 of the Local Government Act 1993 be placed in the Grenfell record on council website and on social media. 3. The alcohol-free zones commence operation 7 days from the date of notice. 4. The operating hours of the alcohol-free zones within the Main Street area be reviewed at the completion of the 12-month trial period, and a further report be presented to council to determine if the operating hours should be modified. Can I get the Director of Environmental Services to speak on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, as previously stated, the previous alcohol-free zones lapsed last year on the 30th of September. So there was a proposal put together in accordance with the requirements of the Local Government Act to re-establish those. Council, at its previous meeting on the 21st of March, resolved to place that proposal on public exhibition, which included the timeframes for the Main Street area. So that went out on public exhibition. As part of that process, it was not only sent out to the public on sort of social media within the Grenfell record or on our website, but it was also referred to New South Wales Police and also to liquor licence holders within the area that was going to be affected. So as a result of that, we received 2 public submissions, which are outlined in the report, with some corresponding comments in relation to the issues that were raised. There was no feedback received from New South Wales Police or from liquor licence holders as a result of that advertising the proposal. So, in addition to that, in the report it also touches on things the New South Wales Government's latest commitments to the vibrancy reforms, so that nighttime economy. So we believe that that does fit within those, the time frames proposed within the Main Street. There is still a requirement for business owners, if they want to have al fresco dining on footpaths, for instance sake, that they still need to come back through council and there's sort of checks and balances to make sure that that's done appropriately. But other than that, Mr. Chair, there's a recommendation there for council to resolve.
Would anyone like to speak to Councillor Cook?
I'm not speaking to. I suppose I'm not completely against. Well, I believe we need a policy. That's not a problem. I just am more in support of the the public submission that says why are we changing our policy. I suppose I support the policy prior to the 30th of September 2023, which had alcohol-free zones 24 hours a day rather than going to alcohol-free zones between 10 and 9 o'clock the next morning. I think the submission raises some good points, and those have been the guidelines in since 1999. It's been 20 years, 23 years. I don't see why we are changing something that's working.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I can make a comment about policies in general. I mean, I sit in this room and I get told that policies need to be updated. So it actually wasn't a policy, it was in line to the legislation, and it's outlined in the report in terms of what we need to do to actually go through that process, and acknowledging that there's also economic nighttime economy benefits that's also been provided in the report. Obviously, acknowledging that there have been 2 submissions received in that process, and those comments have been provided against the submissions in terms of the staff considerations and assessments against it.
Okay, if I can re-clarify what I was saying, thank you for pointing that out, General Manager. Maybe it wasn't a policy, but the alcohol-free zones were in place from 1999 to 2023. And I'll add to my comments that the police have supported the alcohol-free zones and yet have not provided a submission in changing those zones from 10 to 9. So from my interpretation of what the police have actually preferred the alcohol-free zone to stay 24 hours a day.
I would like to speak to that. Council values the police input into these decisions, but it's up to the council to set the policy, not the police. And I'd like to reiterate what the director said about the economic and nighttime economy that the state government is trying to implement to encourage, and that we are a part of that as well. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to the motion?
So, through you, Mr. Chair, just to clarify too, so the Local Government Act outlines the process for establishing alcohol-free zones. So within that it says you can only establish an alcohol-free zone for a maximum 4-year period, and the intention of that is that you should be reviewing that. Now the guidelines which are set by, or the ministerial guidelines which are set by the government, is something that you have to take into consideration when you are establishing alcohol-free zones. And they actually talk about saying it shouldn't be just re-establishing alcohol-free zones for the sake of doing it. You should be doing an evaluation as to whether they are needed and whether there should be any changes to the previous alcohol-free zones. So those guidelines is what we've used to put the proposal together. And as I said, I suppose council resolved to that the proposal includes the reduced times for Main Street, which has gone out to the public, and as I said, that is only for a 12-month period as a trial, and then a review after the 12 months. And that'll be up to the new council to establish whether they want to continue with those timeframes or whether they want to change that at all.
Okay, we should put this to a vote. All those in favour? Carried. And
No, I think we were looking for another show, eh?
no. And I think we that's it for 13.1. We get the mayor back
Yep.
in.
The mayor back in. Councillor Best stays out, I think.
Big pardon?
Yeah, Councillor Best stays out of the room.
Okay. Everyone is at best.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillors, the motion was carried for item 13.1.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Councillor McKenna. Thank you. Okay, so item 13.2, developer application. 12/2024, change of use of part of building to dwelling and alterations to building. Got a recommendation there, we're going to move in a seconder. Move Councillor Dipro, second to Councillor Frame. Would you like to speak to that, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So development application 12/2024 is referred to council for determination as the applicant seeks to rely on clause 5.3, development near zone boundaries of the Weddin LEP. So that clause essentially allows council to consider an approval that would not normally be approved in one zone. If it was approvable in the adjoining zone within a certain distance, being 50 metres, then you can approve it. So the development site's known as 20 to 22 Main Street, Grenfell, and it currently contains a building that has 2 commercial shops which front Main Street. It also has a rear portion of the building which is adjacent to George Street. So the application involves the conversion of the rear portion of the building adjacent to George Street into a dwelling. So that was previously or historically used as part of a bakery many years ago. So the allotment is located in our E1 local centre zone, but it adjoins the R1 zone. The whole site is within that 50 metre distance of the residential zone. So while that dwelling is not permissible in the E1 zone, it is permissible under that clause 5.3 of the LEP because it's within 50 metres of the residential zone. An assessment of the proposal has been undertaken, and it's been found to be consistent with the LEP and the requirements of clause 5.3. As the property is located in a heritage zone, the application was referred to Council's Heritage Advisor. Based on the comments received from her, there was a request made to the applicants to do some changes to the design. They have come back with what we now deem to be suitable design, some minor changes to sizes of openings and a few other things. The other important thing was keeping some of those historic features of the rear portion of the bakery. So you'll see those on the plans now that's going to be kept in place. So an assessment of the development application has been undertaken under the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, and it's considered that the proposal largely complies with section 4.15 of the Act, and therefore there's a recommendation there, Mr Mayor, for it to be approved subject to conditions.
Councillors? Everybody good? All good? All right. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you, councillors.
Councillor Best?
So the recommendation was carried, Councillor Best. Item 13.3, development applications, construction certificates and complying development certificates. I'm guessing that's just for Weddin.
Yep.
Any questions on that, councillors? Item 13.4, development application, first 2024 proposed tourist and visitor accommodation development comprising of a 20-room motel with associated restaurant, manager's residence and car park area. We're moving to seconder. Move Councillor Frome, second Councillor McKellar. Would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So development application 1/2024, as I said, it proposes a tourism and visitor accommodation development. So it's a motel with attached restaurant, manager's residence and also the associated car parking area. The development application is referred to council for determination due to one public submission being received as a result of the public consultation process. The development site is known as 111 Cowra Road. It's located on the corner of Cowra Road and Main Lead. There's a copy of obviously the plans and documentations that were submitted with the application attached to the report, which councillors would be able to go through. The development proposes access to the site from Main Lead. As previously reported to council, Main Lead is a Crown Road which was identified through the assessment process. That ultimately means that if the development is approved and construction commenced, council has previously resolved to assume ownership of that road as required by Crown Lands. Historically we've maintained and formed that road anyway, so there'll be no material change to council's budget or obligations there. We're just officially owning the road. Access to the site is proposed from Main Lead based on feedback from Transport for New South Wales. It's also due to the topography of the land and the way that the building's set up. So coming straight off the highway, there was concerns raised from Transport for New South Wales. Their mantra is they'd rather see access off a secondary road rather than the highway. It was also going to pose raise some issues around gradients of driveways, just with the way that the lay of the land is there. So that's the reason for that. There was one submission which is included in the report. There's an assessment of the issues that were raised in that submission. and some of those issues have resulted in conditions being placed on or conditions in the recommendation that be placed on the consent. Again, it's permissible within the R1 residential zone, and it's been assessed that the proposal largely complies with section 4.15 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, so therefore there is a recommendation there, Mr Mayor, for it to be approved subject to conditions.
Councillors, Councillor Kanai.
I welcome the investment into our community that this development will contribute to, so I support it.
Councillor Best.
I just had a question regarding, I wasn't sure, it's probably in there because it's 100 pages long, so if I missed it, I'm sorry.
You've been skimming.
Yeah, I did go through it, but they're going to curb, will require their access, like to put a curb and guttering or a road?
There is a condition there to require the applicant to provide curb and guttering as a main lead, and obviously a new entrance, sealed entranceway. So the curb and guttering, the way the condition is read, it doesn't extend for the full length of the property, because essentially you get up to a part of the hill where there's no point extending the curb and guttering, because the water's going to be going the other way anyway. So there's no further curb and guttering down there. So.
That's all. Yeah, I'm fully.
Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Director. In the last application we just talked about, you said that there was it was within 50 metres of a residential area, and because it sat on that boundary, we were able to allow that development to happen. Is there the same assurances with this one, seeing that it's a motel in a residential area?
No, so it is. So the difference is under the LEP, the land use table has a range of different of land uses that are approved or permitted within each land zone. So within the residential zone, a tourist and visitor accommodation facility, motel, is permitted. Sorry, so it doesn't rely on any other clauses to make it permissible. It's just permitted with consent in the R1 zone. So the R1 zone, while it says it's residential, it does allow for other land uses within the residential zone, whereas in the previous report it was in the E1 zone, so the employment zone, where it expressly says that dwellings are not permitted, so therefore it was only permissible based on that clause 5.3, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? I'll put the recommendation to the meeting. All those in favour? Carried. I'd also like to congratulate the applicants too, because this is going to be absolutely fantastic for the community. So the recommendation is approved, Councillor Prose. So item 13.5, development consent, 2022 application to modify consent to change design of amenities building at the Grenfell Cemetery. The mover and seconder, move Councillor Diprose, second Councillor Parlett. Would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So Council's received an application to modify development consent 17/2022, which is the amenities building at the Grenfell Cemetery. It's reported to Council for determination due to the requirements of Council's council-related development location conflict of interest policy that requires any council, obviously related application to be reported to Council. So the modification applications proposes a change from the original design of the building, from a brick building which included multiple toilet facilities, to a single modular building with one unisex facility. I believe that was due to the budget constraints associated with it. So it also includes a small change to the location of the proposed toilet. It's still within the general vicinity of where it was before, but some ground penetrating radar of the area on the original location identified some unmarked graves. that were potentially going to be impacted by the building. So based on that investigation, the location has been moved slightly so that the building and the on-site effluent management system can all be fit within an area that's been deemed clear. There's a few tree roots and stuff, but that's not expected to impact on the development. The modification application has been assessed under the Act, so it needs to fit within a test to be considered to be a modification. So we have gone through that in the report to say that, yes, I do believe that it fits within clause 4.552 of the Act and does constitute a modification. An assessment's been made of that, and there's a recommendation there, Mr Mayor, that it be approved subject to the original conditions, just with condition 1 being modified to refer to the new plans.
Councillors, pretty straightforward. Bring it on. Bring it
I'll
on.
make a comment. I'd love the brick one, it would have been good, but I think this is entirely appropriate and it's a lot better than the Portaloo. So. That's
Yeah. Right, well done, Luke. We'll put that to the meeting. All those in favour?
Aye.
It's carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 13.6, Keeping Cats Safe at Home program. I think this one's just for information, I believe.
Yeah,
Would you
just
like
a
to
minute.
speak on that one?
Just a couple of points to raise. Obviously, council will be aware that we received some grant funding to run a program from received some grant funding from the RSPCA to run a program in conjunction with the Weddin Shire around keeping cats safe at home. So that program has been steadily moving along, and on the 6th of June we reached a further milestone by desexing the 300th cat down at the local vets. So we thought it was probably timely to bring another report back to council and just advertise that through the public, how well the program has gone. We've also received funding under the program to be able to distribute 30 cat enclosures. So council and Weddin Shire have evaluated applications, and we managed to get 30 of those out into the public, so that was well received as well. We're continuing to run with the program, so it will run through until December this year, or until the funding is exhausted. We'll continue on with that desexing program, and hopefully may get a few more than 300 cats done. But just to make special mention to Melanie and Dipros from Weddin Shire. Obviously our local vets down here who have been fantastic. They're running designated desexing days for us just so we can churn through the cats. And also a special mention, I think that the vets mentioned Alison, our ranger, and the work that she's done to sort of really drive this program. So she's probably the primary one that's sort of picking up cats and delivering back to people and getting the word out there. So it probably wouldn't be as successful as what it has been without all those people. So.
Councillor Diplos.
Yeah, just to reinforce Luke's comments. I noticed that at the festival there was a stall there from the RSPCA, so there was 3 of the staff that worked there. One of them was Dr. Gemma Marr, who was the driving force behind this being established. Just happened that my wife and I ended up taking 2 of them up to the nursery to have a look, because they don't get much of an opportunity to look at this sort of stuff. But I think what's really interesting when you see the effectiveness of this, we're hearing that some people are complaining that kittens are hard to get now, which is pretty neat. But what was good for the likes of Gemma and Claudia coming up to the area where this is happening is really invigorating for them and inspiring, because they just sort of sit down in Sydney in the RSPCA, and there's no question that Weddin is streets ahead of any other council. There's 10 other councils, but yeah, thanks again to Alison and all the work that she's doing. It's great.
Councillor Parlett.
Can our director pass on council's many thanks to our ranger and land care. Thank you, and our rep.
Thank you, councillors. So item 13.7, update on the status of Cornell and Cracknell waste facilities. The recommendation there was moved and seconded. Moved Councillor Frame, seconded Councillor McKellar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the report is just to provide an update to the community and obviously councillors in relation to the two waste facilities. So as previously advised, they were closed based on the requirements of the EPA and also an occupational hygienist who inspected the sites due to the presence of asbestos. As previously advised, we've been continuing to liaise with the EPA regarding a suitable and financially viable option to remediate both sites. The EPA has previously advised us that all asbestos contaminated waste, including soil, would need to be removed from the site. That's a massive amount of waste that we potentially have to deal with. So we've had waste consultants obviously do a general evaluation that sort of worked out around 2,500 cubic metres of waste per site. So it was reported, I think, to council previously that we'd had a sort of a bit of a verbal estimate of what that cost potentially could be. It was around about 600,000. As a result of conversations with the EPA around trying to progress a better outcome than taking that soil off site, is trying to encapsulate it on the sites. They wanted a quotation in writing for that. So we spoke to the asbestos removal contractor that we've been dealing with in terms of the sites and evaluating. So that quotation came back at over $1.7 million per site, based on having trucks, occupational hygienists, the monitoring and the disposal costs to take that amount of waste, contaminated waste, to a facility. So that was provided to the EPA with justification to say, well, look, that's sort of totally outside of what we can afford. In the process of sort of getting that stuff together, council also received a draft prevention notice from the EPA, which outlined a number of requirements that they were proposing to impose on council. It's important to note that that hasn't been issued to council to date. That was just a proposal, similar to a notice of intention if council or another regulatory authority was going to issue an order. It's just providing council with that notice to say that that's their intention. We have the right of reply, which we've sent a reply back to the EPA as to reasons why we don't believe the prevention notice needs or should be issued. Some of those is that it's just further delays the process. It adds further costs to council. We don't think it's probably warranted and sort of really achieves anything. We've been open and upfront from day one, I believe, in terms of saying, look, we think it's reasonable to try and remove a certain amount of waste from the sites. The EPA sort of raised concerns around just burying everything on site or encapsulating it. We have all the way along said, look, we want to try and get some of the piles of asbestos, tyres, obviously the drum muster sites, all cleaned up and take that waste away. But it gets to a point that what's left, it's unviable to think that we're going to go and get excavators out there and load trucks and move 2,500 cubic metres of soil, which may or may not be contaminated, but essentially we have to treat it like it is because we're dealing with asbestos. So there was some estimates around 60 truck and dog loads per site, so that's sort of the scale of that. So the dealing with the soil and the amount of that is probably a large proportion of the costs. So our argument to the EPA has been, well, let's deal with the waste that we can see. Any of that waste that's soil that may be contaminated, we can safely
encapsulate those on site in accordance with the regulation, and that will be in accordance with recommendations from an occupational hygienist, our waste consultant, and also a asbestos removalist. So the EPA did have a little bit of a change in direction, and that's they said, look, they'd be open to that a little bit more, but we needed to provide further information. But then after that, we end up getting this prevention notice essentially. So in the meantime, council has progressed along with trying to remediate both sites. So we have commenced the removal of bonded and sort of the visible asbestos fragments at Quandiella and Caracable. We have had an occupational hygienist out to Caracable and provided a clearance certificate for certain parts of the site to allow the drum muster guys in there to commence removing the drum muster drums. That commenced earlier this week. So we will, at Quandiella, on Monday, we actually commenced the removal of some of the scrap steel that was stockpiled on Quandiella site. So that involved having an occupational hygienist on site doing air monitoring. We had asbestos removalists on site checking the steel as we were, and an excavator, council's water cart, washing down, putting it into trucks and taking it off site and bringing that into the Grenfell tip so it can be sent off for recycling. Unfortunately, just the trying to put steel and wire and stuff into our truck and dogs sort of was going to be a time-consuming sort of process. So we've actually rescheduled to start again next Monday with a designated truck that's designed to carry scrap steel, so we can actually get more in the truck per load. So hopefully that will quicken up the process. From there, we will also look at the next stage will be sort of trying to remove tyres and any other waste that we can get off the sites, and then also dealing with, as I said, stockpiles of asbestos, particularly friable asbestos at Quandiella is a big thing. So to know what we're dealing with, we have to get rid of some of that stockpile of steel and other waste to be able to get down to almost ground level to see what we're dealing with. So just want to make a point to the community. We've had a lot of waste dumped at Quandiella over the fence. We've had waste dumped at Caracable outside the facility, including tyres, mattresses. It's been pretty disappointing at Caracable to turn up with EPA officers and see the amount of waste that's just dumped at the front gate. So it's really hard to sort of try and justify to them that we're trying to clean it up and we're trying our best when it's just adding to the problem. So a lot of tyres, which shouldn't be dumped there anyway, even if it was open. So I just sort of say to everyone, we just need to be mindful that we are trying to get these cleaned up, and by dumping stuff there, it's adding to the cost, because essentially I have to treat it like it's asbestos because it's over the top of friable asbestos now. So we have to go through a process to take that waste away just to get down to where we're trying to get to. So, we do have another meeting with the EPA tomorrow to further discuss that draft prevention notice and hopefully a way forward, which we in terms of coming up with a more viable option for dealing with the sites and remediate them. I suppose the other thing too is just to let the community know is that the sites have to remain closed until we get that full remediation done.
What avenues have we got open to us, Luke, to try and stop the illegal dumping?
So we have installed remote cameras. So just to let everyone know, so we will be monitoring all those areas. You certainly can bring some of those large bulky items into Grenfell.
like everyone else in the Shire, there is charges for tyres and mattresses because it costs us a lot of money to get rid of them. But a lot of your other household general waste can come in there, and if you're a Shire resident, a lot of that's free. It's just a matter of bringing that in. I know it's a bit of an inconvenience for people, but it's far better to do that than dump it at the front gate or around the corner, which just adds to the cost to council to try and clean up.
Is it making it harder for us to keep those tips viable in the future if they keep doing some illegal dumping?
So one of the concerns from the EPA has been ongoing security of the site. So we need to be able to prove to the EPA, if we are going to reopen these facilities, that we can ensure their security, and so we can restrict access and stop people. So yes, it does, I suppose, create some further concerns from an EPA point of view if people are going to continue just to dump stuff in the front.
Is there do you know what sort of fines are involved if we actually catch people on film dumping, illegal dumping?
Don't know,
Just
Mr.
to
Mayor,
let
off
the
the top
public
of
know.
my head what the fines are, but there are substantial fines for dumping waste outside of the facility.
If it's possible, I mean, if you know of someone that's illegal dumping out of Crackle Quantity, could you please let council know? I mean, we would be very grateful. We're trying to keep these facilities open, and it's making it harder and harder every time there's dumping out there to try and keep these things open. So just remember, it's for your own benefit not to dump stuff while they're shut. Thank you, Luke. There's a recommendation there, councillors. All those, sorry, Councillor Best.
Well, I just, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to agree with your comments there. I think it's important we actually do take a firm stance against the dumping, if we can, and say exactly that, and get it out in the public, get it out in the papers, get it out in the newsletters out in Crackle and Cordiella, and say to them that we will pursue illegal dumping out there, and we will make sure that they get fined. The residents will tell you it's not them, it's people further out. Well, if that's the case, that's great. That's fine, but the residents need to help us out in that case and nominate these people that are doing this dumping, and we need to act upon those cameras. If we find out who it is, we need to get them charged, because those tips are out there for the community, and this is just destroying our chances of ever getting them up and done. The other comment I make is I think we need to, some of the things in that report, I find, I'm not an expert, I find them ridiculous, asking us to truck the dirt off a site and take it somewhere that's got a more populated area through towns. It's just ridiculous. Where the common sense approach should be buried on site and deal with it on the site. And I think we should, at this point, I think it's to the point where we need to make contact with the Minister's office, and we need to write, and I'd like to move a motion, we do, council writes a letter to the Minister. I believe it's Honourable Weddin Shire, I think, is the Minister for the EPA, and we write them a letter, and actually in that letter we outline our process that we would like to take to achieve, where we can do a cost-effective response, and we can deal with this in an appropriate manner, instead of like $1.7 million, instead of making a council bloody insolvent trying to deal with a waste issue that's just so easily dealt with. It's ridiculous, and I'd like to move the motion we write to the Minister.
All those in favour? I'd just like to point out too, like if the local residents are sure that these people are out of town that are doing the dumping, then they're obviously seeing these people dump. So we would like some number plates of the vehicles that are actually dumping rubbish there at your tips. So if you see anyone dumping rubbish and they're not your locals, then please inform council with registration numbers.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, just formalities. That was an amendment put, so we just need to make.
Oh, there's an amendment. Okay, so that amendment.
Yeah, the amendment was put and carried.
And carried.
That council writes to the Minister.
Yeah.
Recommendation on a motion, so
Well, it's an amendment. It's a second item, so it is an amendment. It's like notice of motions at the start of the business paper.
Council writes to the Minister.
For the environment.
Yeah, Minister.
Outlining council's position.
Yeah, outline council's positions and concerns regarding the this remediation.
Challenges.
Your motion.
That's not the emotion.
Okay, so that now becomes a motion. So all those in favour of writing a letter to the Minister?
Aye.
That's carried. Thank you. You're against that, Councillor Cook?
Calling for a division.
I'm happy to answer to that, thank you, Councillor Keller. I'm actually shocked that we can sit here and say we need to write to the Minister. We've had months to do with this. These tips have been closed since August last year, I think was the first incident, which was a fire incident and arson. And to be sitting here and listening to us, or not us, I'm not taking any responsibility for this, to be telling our community that it's their fault and that they have to be more responsible for illegal dumping. We had a grant to do cameras. We had cameras on the site on the day of the fire, that we haven't lodged a police report or worked out what happened or looked at those cameras on the day, and yet it's now May after 8 months, and we had in the hub meeting when we went out to all the communities, this was their biggest concern, and yet we're now going to write a letter as a response. I'm sorry, I'm just totally shocked that would be our response.
I think, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, I think council officers should be allowed the opportunity to have the discussions. It shouldn't just be straight to, just like when constituents come and complain to councillors, you encourage them to come and talk to the council staff first, not jumping straight directly to the Minister. We have gone through this process to try and be pragmatic with the staff. So now is the point in time for escalation. And those reports of the fire that did come through emergency services, those things are documented down. So we have tried our best, and I think people have gone grey in terms of trying to manage this process. So I would actually dispute that council staff have done nothing about it. We've gone off and done reports. The Director of Environmental Services has just outlined all of the things that the staff have done. So I think it's completely disrespectful to be stating that nothing has been done.
Okay, I'll take that as a statement, but I think it's just as disrespectful to blame this on our community and say it's all about illegal dumping. I just think our community will be absolutely devastated and up in arms to hear that we're blaming them for it.
Mr. Mayor, can I provide a response to that? Because I believe I've moved the motion.
Yep.
I have never saying that the community is doing illegal dumping. If you remember what I said, they told me it was people coming from outside the Shire dumping in those things. And I'm asking the community to help us in alleviating that problem, which is compounding the issue and making it more and more difficult for what council wants to do, which is get those tips back open for the community. That's what we want to do. And I want to thank the Director for all the work. I know he's put an immense amount of work into many discussions with the EPA and backwards and forwards. And instead of berating him, I'd like to thank him for all the work he's done and the effort he's put in to try and get in a reasonable time frame. I know it's difficult, it's 8 months, but that's how these processes take. That's why we're escalating it, because we're at the point where we can't do this on our own, and we'll need to ask the Minister for help in dealing with this issue. I think we're not saying the community is caused the problem, we're saying help us fix it. It's pretty simple. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Best. I'd just like to say that there's probably been, you said, 6 months, Councillor Cook, that it's been on the table?
Well, I said, I think the fire was in August, and I think the tips were closed around the 11th of October, if I remember correctly.
So the question I would ask you is, we've had half a dozen meetings since then, why haven't you actually brought it up and made a notice of motion that we write a letter to the Minister or do whatever you want staff to do? I mean, you've had the opportunity to do that and you haven't done it. So instead of blaming everybody else, I think you should take some responsibility yourself.
I'll draw your attention to my submission to the operational plan written in April that does address that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
April, September, October, November, December, January, February, April. Through March, April, sorry, missed a month. 8 months. Thank you. Councillor Cook. So we've moved and passed that, I guess?
No.
Yeah.
No?
We only move the amendment.
Move the amendment?
Comes the motion.
Yeah. So we can just put it now.
Put that to the meeting? All those in favour?
Aye.
Yeah, we do.
Okay. Would you like a division on that, councillor Cook?
Call it division.
You'll call it a division? Okay. So I'm
Sorry,
gonna do-
can I get a point of the practice? We didn't have a motion to start with. So what is, you voted on the amendment, but there is no motion.
The motion is the recommendation,
Motion.
councillor Cook. It's in every single business paper. You vote on the recommendation. You've moved an amendment to the recommendation. Recommendation is in every single business paper unless it's for information.
So that's been done and carried. Thank you, councillors. So now we need a division on the vote. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you, councillors. One against.
I can vote that I know the report. I'm not promoting that the minister
Item 14, delegates reports. We have nil. Item 15, minutes of the committee meetings. 15.1.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. Item 15.1, committee report. Receive and note the draft minutes of the Weddin Shire Audit Risk and Improvement Committee meeting. A recommendation there is, except where otherwise dealt with, that the draft minutes of the Weddin Shire Audit Risk and Improvement Committee meeting held on the 27th of May 2024 be noted as presented. We have a mover and a seconder. Moves Councillor Kanar. Seconded Councillor Frame. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 15.2, Council Committee Report requiring action. Minutes of the Heritage Committee meeting held on the 5th of June 2024. Recommendation there, except where otherwise dealt with, the minutes of the Heritage Committee meeting held on the 5th of June 2024 be noted and adopted as presented. Been moved and seconded. Move Councillor Diprose, seconded Councillor McKellar. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you, councillors.
Just make a note in terms of one of the discussions we had at the meeting, which I thought was really good. I had a conversation with a mentor some time ago about who shared with me what was on Broken Hill. I don't know how long ago it was, but it was basically working with Heritage New South Wales to help people that had buildings in the main street around upgrading facades and verandas. That was the right words. So that was the topic of discussion. The director is circulating some background as to how Broken Hill did that. But I think given that our main street, the actual road itself has been done up, there's something we can do to try and help property owners get things better. That'd be nice.
Okay, so we've got on item 16, closed council. Someone like to move to go into closed council? Move Councillor Parlett, second Councillor Frame. All those in favour?
Aye.
It's carried. Thank you. We'll move into closed council. So, we're right to go? Okay. Welcome back, everybody. The reason we went into closed council was because there were matters of personal matters concerning particular individuals other than councillors. The recommendation was that council approves leave. Do you want me to read that?
Oh,
Approves leaves for the general manager for the period specified in the Merrill Minute. Mr Luke Sheen is appointed as acting general manager with the same delegations from council as for the general manager for same. 3, approve a standing acting arrangement for the general manager position with the same delegations to be provided on a rotational basis, subject to staffing arrangements and employment conditions, to 1, Director of Environmental Services, 2, Director of Infrastructure Services, and 3, Director of Corporate Services. And item number 4, that council approve if the GM wishes to attend ministerial or urgent meetings in the role of general manager during a period of leave, she may return to duties. And that's it, thank you. Would someone like to move that we close the meeting? Move Councillor Calas, second Councillor Frame, all those in favour? Aye. All right, thank you councillors, thank you for attending, and bye everybody, have a safe June.